Good evening and welcome to Poland Daily. I'm Nicholas Richardson and this is the news. The Speaker of the Polish Senate, Tomasz Grodzki, announced today that he had summoned the President of the highest auditing body in Poland, namely the Supreme Audit Office, Marian Banaś, to testify in front of a Senate investigative commission in relation to his nomination to the position of head of the Supreme Audit Office. The peculiar nature of this case is increased by the fact that the Constitution does not require the President of the Supreme Audit Office to respect such a summons.
Tomorrow is the day the Speaker of the Polish Senate, Tomasz Grodzki, will send an official note to the President of the Supreme Audit Office, Marian Banaś, informing him that he has been called to testify in front of the Senate Investigation Commission. The basis of the move is supposedly the fact that the Senate was involved in Mr. Banaś's nomination proceedings and has some additional questions.
From what I understand, the lower house, Sejm, also made some moves in order to summon Mr. Banaś. Because we are part of the nomination process of the President of the Supreme Audit Office, we want to ask him about some details, mainly concerning lack of knowledge during the election process. I am under the impression that it could have influenced the final voting result. I think that this would resolve all doubts surrounding the nomination process and cut all the media speculations about him allegedly avoiding contacts with the media. I think that the Senate Committee Forum is a good place for a substantive discussion about the Supreme Audit Office, about the plans of its president for the next term of that body. Let's remember that this is a 6-year term, and it is important to find out what are the priorities of the president and what kind of additional audit processes he is planning in addition to those that are routine. So the substantive discussion about their work is most desirable. This is a decision made by the Senate. MPs do not control what the Senate is doing, so since Speaker Grodzki is from the opposition, he acts on his own and he does not consult nor coordinate his actions with us.
The Speaker of the Polish Senate, Tomasz Grodzki, assures that the discussion will be intense but also substantive. That is, if such discussion will take place at all. The President of the Supreme Audit Office is not legally obliged to react to such summons at all.
The Supreme Court has today overruled the appeal filed by the attorneys of Marek Falenta. The Polish businessman is serving a prison sentence following the so-called tape scandal. The scandal broke when investigative journalists published a number of audio tapes of discussions between high-ranking politicians secretly recorded in a number of Warsaw restaurants. Falenta is currently serving a 2.5-year prison sentence.
Falenta's attorneys based their appeal on the alleged violations of regulations by the Court of Second Instance. However, judges of the Supreme Court ruled that no malpractices were committed during the proceedings, which could have influenced the verdict. The attorneys also stressed that their client was not guilty and demand a retrial.
The former Prime Minister of Belgium, Charles Michel, visited Warsaw today to meet the Prime Minister of Poland, Mateusz Morawiecki. Michel will take over Donald Tusk's position as President of the European Council on 1st of December.
Ladies and gentlemen, it's for me a great pleasure to be here in Poland. In preparation of this new function, it's very important for me to have this occasion to discuss with the Prime Minister, with his team, the different topics we have to face at the European level in the next weeks, in the next months. And indeed, I share this opinion that the trust is a very important condition in order to be able in the next weeks, in the next months to take important European decisions. We have discussed today, this morning, many topics, but I would like to highlight this excellent.
We both want the European Union to be a global superpower, not only economically but also politically. That is why talks about the economy, politics and our neighboring countries are a natural thing. Michel's proposition is to spend some time on a strategic debate during which many prime ministers and presidents need to focus on key matters.
The Polish Central Bank has announced that it has transferred to Poland 100 tons of Polish gold that had been kept at the Bank of England in London. The secret mission included 8 separate flights to Poland, heavily guarded by security forces. The Polish Central Bank has almost doubled its gold reserves in recent years, purchasing 125.7 tons in the years 2018 and 2019. Half of Poland's gold reserves remain in England. The president of the Polish Central Bank, Adam Glapiński, told the press that he doesn't rule out the possibility of Poland buying more gold in the coming years. Today, some 10,000 farmers from across Germany, with around 500,000 tractors, protested against the government's agriculture policies, bringing traffic to a standstill in central Berlin.
The protesters gathered at the city's landmark, the Brandenburg Gate, demanding more planning security and saying they would no longer accept the current situation. Farming is the basis for everyone, whether you live in a big city, a small city or in a village. The situation has become very drastic as far as rules go, also from politicians. We are no longer willing to accept this situation.
Was eben die Reglementierung betrifft.
On every bridge for the first 160 kilometers, there were people awaiting the tractors, waving and hanging banners in the farmers' support.
Aber wenn auf jeder Autobahnbrücke
On every bridge across the highway between Schweinfurt, from where we left, up to Erfurt and Arnstadt, there were between 10 and 100 people on Sunday, barbecuing and hanging banners from the bridge. They waved and it was very emotional. We realized that we are accepted by the public.
runtergehängt.
Many young farmers stated that they are in doubt whether it's a good decision to follow in their parents' footsteps and become farmers.
Ja, aktuell haben wir einfach das Problem, dass viele Landwirte.
The problem right now is that a lot of farmers see their future in danger. There are young farmers like myself who are thinking about whether or not to take over their parents' farm. It's very, very important to know what the future in farming looks like so we have certainty. If we invest now, we need to know whether, for example, a new barn is still legal in its current form in 5 years.
Sicherheit, dass beispielsweise eine Stallanlage auch in 5 Jahren noch so.
The protests in Germany have been inspired by a farmers' protest which started earlier this year in the Netherlands in reaction to the government's plans to introduce legislation which would strike against farmers, but according to the government is meant to mitigate environmental and climate change problems.
That's the news. Thank you for watching. Stay with us for the weather, Poland Daily Business and more programmes. But from me, it's have a good night and a better tomorrow.
Hello and welcome to Poland Daily Weather. The forecast for tonight calls for cloudy and partly cloudy skies throughout the country. On the eastern coast, in Olsztyn, Białystok and Lublin, there's a high chance of fog, so we do advise caution, especially while driving. The evening will be fairly warm, and we can expect temperatures to vary between 0 and 5 degrees. Tomorrow, we can expect to see cloudy skies in the northern, western and central regions of Poland. In Zielona Góra, there's a high chance of showers. The southeast can expect partly cloudy skies. The warmest spot on the map will be Kraków and Katowice, with a high of 10 degrees, and the coldest will be Białystok at 2 degrees. The next 3 days will bring showers on Thursday on the eastern coast. By Friday, the front will move towards the west, and on Saturday we can expect clear skies and a slight drop in the temperature. That is all for now. I thank you for joining us, and I invite you to stay with us for Poland Daily Business.
Poland Daily Business Edition, and very crucial week this month we had because Polish gas trading company PGNiG, or Polish National Gas Mining and Distribution decided that it will no longer require gas from Russia delivered via Yamal pipeline. This is important, this is historic, and Wojciech Jakubik of Business Alert portal will tell us why. Good morning, sir, or good evening.
Good evening. Glad to be here. So when it comes to Yamal contract, we had to say something until the end of this year because the window of opportunity to negotiate the prolongation of this deal is closing at the end of this year.
And so the deal itself is famous. It has been signed in what? In
1993, and it was renewed in 2010, and it brings controversies from the very beginning because it's a relic on gas market from the European perspective. No one has more expensive gas contract than Poles have because we have some stringent contract parts which are hampering the development of whole Polish gas market. In the first place, you have a take-or-pay clause inside the contract that makes Poland bring around 8 BCM, 8 billion cubic meters of gas yearly because it is signed in contract that we need to pay for it if we want it or if we don't want it. So we need to take a big amount of natural gas from Russia, even if you want to diversify. So in 2022, we'll have a bigger possibility to bring gas from United States, from Qatar, from any other direction, because this Yamal contract will not be prolonged.
What was the Russian income or Gazprom income a year from Poland?
It is hard to measure one-to-one because it depends how much did we take it, but those are billions of dollars that are coming to Russian budget.
And what percentage of it is above market price and anywhere else in Europe?
We can measure it, not totally correct because the deal is secret, but we can say that on average German or Western European market, you pay like $150 per 1,000 cubic meters, and in our contract it might be even 300 or even more dollars per the same unit. So we have a huge difference between the Yamal contract and the market conditions. This Yamal contract is not aligned to the market conditions, and Russians didn't want to renegotiate. That's why PGNiG is in court dispute with Gazprom. There is no result of this court dispute. So from the Polish perspective, it's better not to prolong this bad contract. It is possible to discuss something new after 2022, but in totally different environment, because we'll have a large LNG terminal in Świnoujście, we'll have a Baltic pipe gas pipeline from Norway, and then we can negotiate with Russians like even partners.
Świnoujście LNG terminal, that's development that started in 2005, I believe, in a conceptual case, and started to be operational in 2013 or something like
15,
that?
Yeah, after 10 years from the idea of President Lech Kaczyński to the making, it took Poles over 10 years to have this LNG terminal on the ground, and it brings huge change, because for now we don't have the existential threat of gas cutting, of gas supplies cutting from Russia, because we can bring it from any other resource, from any other source. So having this Baltic pipe gas pipeline will have also economic alternative to gas from Russia, because the pipeline gas is steadily competitive in comparison to Gazprom offer.
Yes, can we quickly say what are the LNG or methane use, but natural gas is methane, use in Poland right now? How many billions of cubic meters we are using? How much we will lack if we turn off the Yamal pipeline, and where we will get the resupplies?
Okay, so basically Poland needs right now like 17 billion cubic meters a year. We bring around 10 BCM from abroad, and 8 of it is coming from Russia, because it is the minimum supply we need to pay for on Yamal contract. So in 2022, we could get around 8 to 10 BCM from Norway, then about 8 BCM in LNG, and then if we need more, we can think of another LNG terminal in Zatoka Gdańska, in Gdańsk Basin, floating terminal, FSRU. And if not, we can discuss if we want some Russian gas, like 5 BCM maybe, on totally different rules, but if we don't want Russian gas, we can make it without any Russian supplies, and that's the basic idea.
Russia has the official strategy of floating the gas, natural gas from their resources to Western Europe via Baltic, via Nord Stream 1 and Nord Stream 2. How much of what we're talking about, how much gas will flow from Russia to Germany if the Nord Stream 2 will become operational?
So both Nord Streams could bring around 110 BCM annually, and it is like whole Ukrainian transit. That might be the main reason why they are building this costful infrastructure to omit Ukrainian gas supplies to Europe, but it will make Germany a repository of Russian gas towards all Europe, Central and Eastern Europe region, and would cement Gazprom position on our market, even with having more and more alternatives on the ground. So that's the idea behind those two projects, and Polish alternative is bringing smaller change, but from the perspective of Central and Eastern Europe, it is enough to have a choice. And if you have a choice, you have the best gas price possible.
Because you cannot be threatened by turning off the tap.
And we've been threatened with gas supplies cut off too many times in history. That's why it is possible that Poles will not bring any gas from Russia starting in 2022.
And that's another 3 years, but
we'll see.
It is very important that this particular move happened just after the election, and the Law and Justice, the current ruling party, has a stable majority in Polish Sejm or Polish Parliament. So at least for another 4 years, they will keep in power and will deliver this breakage of the Yamal contract.
It appears that Polish gas policy will be stable for next 4 years.
So that's good information, and hopefully our strategy will work. What is our Polish strategy, by the way? Keep the gas diversified, have alternative routes, and is there anything more to that?
We can use gas to change our energy sector, because gas will play a heavier role in energy generation in Poland, because if you want to go towards famous renewables, which are really fancy, and you want to have a clean energy, you also need some backup. And it appears that one of good backups to renewable energy is gas-fired power plant, and we'll see more gas-fired power plant in Poland. So to keep it safe and to increase the imports, you need to have your market diversified, and that's the idea behind the diversification project too.
Wojciech Jakubik, thank you very much for this insight, and that was it for tonight's Poland Daily Business.
Good evening and welcome to Poland Daily Business Weather. The forecast for tomorrow will bring cloudy skies to the northern, central and western regions of Poland. We can even expect scattered showers in the city of Zielona Góra. Southeast can expect partly cloudy skies. The temperatures will vary between 2 and 10 degrees. In Europe, we can expect showers in the UK, Lisbon, Paris, Prague and Ankara. Oslo will see a high chance of sleet. The rest of the continent will see partly cloudy skies and cloudy skies. The warmest spot on the map will be Athens and Rome at 18 degrees, while the coldest will be Moscow at 2 degrees below zero. That is all for now. I thank you for joining us, and I wish you all a very pleasant evening.
Good day, everyone. My name is Maria Kądzielska, and this is Poland Daily Culture. He used to be the member of Knesset for Israeli Labour Party, the Secretary General for Labour Party, and the Deputy Speaker of Knesset. He's one of the Israeli politicians who most often visits Poland. Ladies and gentlemen, meet Yechiel Bar.
Hello, nice to meet you.
Thank you for being with us.
My pleasure.
But before we start the interview, let's listen to part of his speech.
A dark history made by the cruel and barbaric German Nazi regime. What I mean is not to change history, neither to bleach it, but we should both examine our past and our history in the right way in order for both of us to be on the right side of the history in the future.
Yechiel, you led for many years Poland-Israel Parliamentary Friendship Group, and you organized events during this, so you know a lot about Polish-Israel relations. Sometimes they're better, sometimes they're worse. Tell us how, in your opinion, we can make them better, of course.
Yeah, well, Israel and Poland, unfortunately, during the last years,
have, ups and downs. I think that in Israel we understand the importance of having good relations, good ties with Poland. And actually, I think that in Poland, you also understand it. Both of us have a common history. We have a huge history together of 1,000 years. However, many people in Poland don't understand exactly the reality in Israel. And actually, in Israel also not everyone understand Poland or Polish people. I know you heard a lot of things about Israelis that think that Poland may had a share of what happened to Jews here. Again, as I said, as a fact, Poland is the biggest cemetery in the world for Jewish people. 3 million Jews are buried around here. We heard all these stories about the Holocaust and what happened in Poland, and it happened mainly in Poland. It's not necessarily mean that it's happened because of Poland. We remember and we know that Poland was occupied by the Nazis. We know that in many, many ways, Polish people in Poland were also victims of the Nazi regime. So not everyone in Israel, including some politicians, not everyone in Israel understand it. Now, of course, like in any war, there were good Polish and bad Polish. By the way, there were good Germans also under the world, even Germans that helped Jews. Yeah, maybe, but I don't know the numbers. But of course, we know Oskar Schindler. Okay, Oskar Schindler was a German righteous among the nation who was in a way saved many Jews from the Nazis, and he in a way worked for the Nazis, okay, as a contractor. So good people and bad people you have everywhere, but I don't think you can blame Poland as a nation, as a state for killing Jews. It wasn't a policy in Poland. Poland was the first state to be occupied in September 1939 by German, and we have to remember it. So, of course, sometimes you hear from Jewish survivors stories about Polish heroes that saved them, and sometimes you hear from a Jewish survivor stories about Polish who didn't help them or even gave them away to the Nazis. So, again, individuals and different stories you have, but you cannot blame a nation for doing it. The blame for the Holocaust is for the German Nazis. Okay, this is the main evil forces came from there, from the twisted brain of Hitler and Goebbels and all these crazy barbaric people that made all this genocide to the Jewish people mainly, but also to others. So I want people to understand it, both in Israel and in Poland. And again, I don't know if I have the power to fix everything or everyone's mind or thoughts about Poland or Israel, but by coming here and investing a lot of people in the parliamentary friendship group, investing a lot of time with the friendship group and in other means, saying that there is people in Israel that wants to thank Polish righteous, Polish heroes that saved Jews around the world, that to say that we also know that we had here and shared here 1,000 years of joint history that Jews had here before the Holocaust. And most of the time during these 1,000 years, the Jews had good life in Poland, fair life, huge communities.
That's why I guess lots of people forget also in the media mentioning Holocaust happened on Polish soil because it was the easiest way, because so many Jews lived here for centuries, and that's why they needed to move them so far. It was easier. It was best. I mean, in fact, it was the biggest community was in Poland, so just they needed to move them that far.
Naturally. So, of course, they killed also Jews in other communities, in other countries all around
Europe. And they brought them to
Poland
as well, because they were to the camps, of course.
Exactly.
But it was the easiest way. So it also proves the fact that Poland was the most open for Israeli groups, and they were part of the nations. That's why we very often forget that lots of the Jews who were murdered during the war, they didn't even really recognize themselves as Jews. They thought they were Poles, as many of our poets, for example, and then they became also the victim of the Nazi regime.
No, absolutely, you are totally right, Maria. Most of the Jews that were killed in the Holocaust were Polish, but also other Jews came from Hungary and other places to Poland, to Auschwitz, to Majdanek, to other Buchenwald, to other concentration camps. But you are right, it became a factory of killing Jews in Poland, because in Poland there was the biggest concentrations of Jews, and we shouldn't forget it. Yeah, absolutely.
So hopefully, and thank you very much publicly also for keeping this Polish-Israeli relations better and better and trying to maintain them, which is always a difficult task, maybe because our nations both share this element of we like to quarrel.
Yeah, but we have to remember one thing. There is a relations between politicians, and I am part of them, but there are also relations between people. And I think that you see more and more Israelis coming to Poland. It used to be that only our youth come to Poland and visit only in concentration camp, but now you will see more and more Israelis coming to Poland as tourists, and they are going to different sites and shopping and culture and concerts. And I think that this is another way to improve relations and discover Poland culturally, from any artistically, and not only visiting in a concentration camp. Of course, the visiting in a concentration camp are very important. It's part of our education as in high school, but I think that Poland have a lot to offer, and we have to mix what we are showing to the Israelis, to the Jewish people from around the world, and this is the part of the remembering of the Holocaust alongside the beautiful Poland, and I hope that will be the case in the next few years, and that we will not leave it only for politicians, but also for them.
It's important to notice that the relation between politicians and the people are different. They're a different thing. As this chance, we of course invite a lot of people from Israel to visit Poland and see how it is really here every day. And thank you for watching Poland Daily Culture.
With its roots in the uprising of November 1830 and encouraged by events elsewhere in Europe, including the success of the Italian independence movement, and take advantage of a Russia weakened by the Crimean War and the reforms introduced by Tsar Alexander II, the uprising of January 1863 was the longest lasting in post-partition Poland. Although it was ultimately unsuccessful and Russian reprisals were swift and ruthless, its engagement of all levels of society went on to have a decisive influence on the subsequent development of Polish society. This is the story of that uprising. It is, and this is a good point to mention here, the book you have, but in particular the.
We can show it to the
If the camera can just look at this, because this, of course, is the symbol of the revolutionary government, and you have the symbols the emblems of Poland, Lithuania, and
so you've got the Polish eagle.
Yeah.
Lithuanian pogoń, so a horseman, that's what Staś proposed, and you've got the symbol of Rus of Ukraine, that is the Archangel Michael. That was the last attempt to restore Poland within those very boundaries, and it says Boże zbaw Polskę, God save Poland. It's a very nice publication. I mean, it was written on the 50th anniversary of the Rising in 1913 by Franciszek Rawita-Gawroński. It says walka o wolność w roku 1863, so the struggle for independence or for freedom in the year 1863. And it has like 150 pages, and it's the best summary because either you've got, books of that type, which you cannot, munch, you cannot digest.
Yes, exactly. Yes.
And this one is very good.
And because you're wearing the lapel pin in colour. But because the significant point is it was this attempt to actually incorporate all the sort of Polish lands in one new entity, sort of avoiding early mistakes where people have missed out various bits and pieces. So that's actually very good. Of course, unfortunately, it was not to be the rebellion was not ultimately to be successful. I mean, there was a lot of fighting. I mean, it's characterised, I think, as we were discussing earlier, by lots and lots of skirmishes and battles. I mean, it was the rebellion forces, if I may call them that, the Polish forces, were actually very, very good at guerrilla warfare and small skirmishes here and there, and running this provisional government almost under the noses of the Russians, who knew it existed. It existed in the cities. It existed everywhere. There was even a rudimentary attempt, I think, at taxation. And yet
you've got double authorities.
But yet the Russians
neighboring. In one building you've got Russian clerks.
But the Russians couldn't actually find it. I mean, even though it was operating under their noses, which I think is a remarkable tribute to those involved.
There, where the general support of the masses was great, so mostly of the peasants in the Lublin voivodeship, in Podlasie voivodeship. I mean, I won't go into too much detail, but these are, let's say, even today, most patriotic voivodeships and provinces of Poland. The uprising survived even till 1865, because we say that 1863, 64, in those places. I mean, the last fighting unit commanded by Father Brzuska. Oh, yet another thing that you've got clergymen involved in the rising.
Exactly.
In Lithuania, for example, I was talking about Żmudź, Samogitia. I mean, Ksiądz Mackiewicz, Father Mackiewicz was involved. And the church really suffered after the uprising, because the Russian government knew that. I mean, they took an active part in the whole thing. So just to finish about Father Brzuska, I mean, this unit kept fighting till 1865.
Yes. And in terms of the various fighting units, I mean, how were they actually formed? And so what stratas of society actually physically turned up to fight?
I mean, the idea was to show to the people that there is a huge support of the peasantry. So that's why there were units wearing guns typical for wearing clothes atypical for the Polish peasants. But this is more to the. I mean, it's more propaganda than reality. I mean, peasants, except some places I was mentioning, Lublin region, Podlasie, Samogitia, didn't support the uprising. So mostly these were noblemen, mostly young noblemen, not reaching 30s. I mean, younger than 30.
Yes.
Younger than me at this point, for example. I mean,
and we've mentioned certainly younger than me at this point. And were sort of those nobles.
I didn't want to say that.
No, that's fine. Those nobles who were involved, were they able to track their own? Sorry, to use the rather pejorative term, to attract their own peasantry with them? Would the nobles say, right, lads, we're off to go and fight for Poland?
It depends. I mean, you have this very beautiful picture in one of the most important novels written in Polish by Stanisław Reymont, Chłopi, the peasants. I mean, Reymont won the Nobel Prize for that in the 1920s.
and I mean, the picture is very subtle, because when, and he says that, when the master, the lord, was nice to his peasants, the peasants joined the master in the fight.
Right, okay.
Where there was conflict, just, otherwise. I mean, the opposite. And some say, who had some problems with their former masters, they would say, oh, that was this January uprising was a war of lords, war of masters. So nothing, I mean, it doesn't, I mean, we are not involved. It's not our thing. But those, I mean, who liked their former masters, let's say, lords, landlords, they would join it and fight and bleed and die along. I mean, the novel is fake in one point, because there is a strict symmetry, because it's almost like you've got 50% of the peasants are doing this way and the other 50% the other. I mean, the ratio is rather different. It's, let's say, 20% to 80% if you take it, summary, I would say.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to another edition of Poland Daily Travel. We're sure glad to see you, and welcome to the show. We're in the fantastic little medieval town of Sandomierz, once one of the most important towns in Poland, and some people say it is still one of the most beautiful. It's built on 7 hills. That's the curious thing about it. It doesn't make it anything like Rome, which is also built on 7 hills. So I'm not going to call it the Little Rome of Poland, because that would be an insult to what on its own needs no comparison. It is perhaps the most pristine of all the medieval towns of Poland. Torun itself, a Gothic masterpiece, is quite a bit bigger than Sandomierz, which has retained very much its rural, provincial flavor over the centuries. Located as it is on the Vistula River between Krakow and Warsaw, it was once upon a time an absolutely thriving market town and a center of the shipment, originally, of the shipment of amber. That's right, from the north of Poland and going to the Romans and even the Greeks before them. So it's an ancient traveled route. And not only that, we have some evidence that people have been living in this area back to Celtic times, which would be 12,000 years ago. It's also one of the oldest towns in Poland. It has a rich Polish history. Kazimierz the Great put his imprint on this town and made it a strong center of trade and a strong defensive position, as it's perched on a bluff above the Vistula River, which is directly behind us. I'm looking north. Behind me is the Opatov Gate. And it's the last gate of 4 main gates that originally were here and part of the original defensive walls. The main building and fortification of the town was up through the 1660s, completed in the 1660s, along with the castle and this tower and the defensive walls by Kazimierz the Great, if memory serves. I hope that's reasonably correct. The other thing that is worth remembering is that there was a huge thriving trade community, a very strong Jewish community here, which was normal in the trade along the Wisła. These people being, the Jewish people being invited in by Kazimierz for particularly that purpose, to increase the trade. So the defensive purpose was set up by the province of the king and his nobles, and trade was, we can say, increased by the influx of Jewish people with special skills, as we've seen before in episodes talking about Kazimierz, Tykocin, and other places in Poland that were regional centers of trade. We can also see, well, we're going to see a number of important buildings here. The market square is pretty amazing. Not pretty amazing, it is amazing. And the basilica and other things like that. And eventually we're going to go down by the river and some other things and take you to see walk along the river and take you to see the Pepper Mountains. So stay tuned for that. The Pepper Mountains, by the way, the oldest mountains in this region, older than the Holy Cross Mountains, which makes them the oldest mountains all the way to the Urals. And only about 200 meters tall. I haven't measured them myself, but that's what I'm told. So you'll get to see all that. So stay tuned. We're going to walk through the city and show you just everything that is possible to show you in the next series of episodes. So stay with us. We're in Sandomierz. You're going to like this. It's a really, really a little gem. Stay with us. Right. So this is the entrance to the Fund. This is where the Fund begins. And no medieval town is complete without a nice gate leading into it. You know, this reminds me of so many different places I've been throughout Europe, but not only in Europe, in, I can say in Central America and South America too. You don't have medieval towns, but you do have this feeling of time standing still. I think that's what I like. It's a huge appeal to me as someone who's studied history and is really turned on, if I can say it, by old stuff. I don't know how you feel about that. Fun of all kinds, but for me, there's nothing like placing myself in the shoes of people who've gone centuries and centuries and centuries before, and then trying to imagine what it must have been like for them over those centuries. You see, 200 years ago, for example, is nothing if you look at the history of this town. It was, for example, destroyed after the walls were built by Casimir the Great. After those walls had been created, and this tower behind me, the one we were up in before, we talked about just before the bumper, he completed that, and those walls only lasted for about 300 years in their entirety before the Swedish came in and destroyed it in the late 1600s. So since that, if you go back to the 1600s, well, it's been 350 years, hasn't it? So 350 years without the walls existing is longer than this town existed with the walls, this medieval town. So it's just fun to think about those things and to walk in those footsteps. I mean, that's what makes for example, Americans like me want to come and travel in Europe and other older civilizations, to have this feeling and to get a sense of time passing slowly over the thousands of years. And as I said before, it's worth remembering that while that's a short time, that history is a short time as well. The history, say 1,000 years of this town, is a short time compared to the 12,000 years that we know that people have been living in this area. And then, well, people like us, more or less. Before that, you have, of course, Neanderthal men living here in the Neolithic times, and some form of human being may have been here long before that. So it gives one pause. This is old to us nowadays, but in terms of what we're used to. But in terms of the history of civilization, this has only been here a short time, no matter how old it looks to us. But, you know, it's an indication, just walking through this town and seeing its surrounding environment is an indication of how slowly time does pass to our perception. And this becomes, a town like this, so pristinely preserved, becomes a kind of time machine, I suppose I'd like to say. It's a kind of time machine where we can experience the past in a very real way. We can walk in the steps of people who walked in the centuries on this particular road. And unlike a place like Warsaw, which has been wholly reconstructed, Sandomierz has remained pretty much intact for all these years. So let's go, come with me, let's go take a look around. Stay tuned for the next episode. Oh, we'll be right back tomorrow.